The system urged Lin Hao to prepare for combat. The serpentine monster slithered up the water to feast on the invasive pleco fishes as Lin Hao watched from below. He racked his brain for his next action. He knew that it was going to be very difficult for him to get out of this mess on account of the tiny pond's size. To make matters worse, a messed-up-looking shark-type beast had joined the fray to munch on some of that freshly dropped black fish lunch. The two mutated monsters inevitably met in the middle of their respective feasts, and they immediately expressed hostility toward one another. Mr. Snake got the jump on the rough shark, biting through its tough scales and letting the poor beast bleed underwater. This snake simply had the advantage when it came to speed and size. It could coil its flexible frame around to find the best angle of attack. Lin Hao, the koi, was just watching the fight with a smile. When the bird and oyster struggle, the fisherman reaps the gains. It seemed like he could be the fisherman today. He kept his eyes on the brawl, but he noticed that some of the pleco fishes had sprawled around his vicinity. Lin Hao quickly chomped on the invasive species with his razor-sharp teeth. He swiftly realized that this fish was a lot harder to swallow than it looked. Another added hassle was that its flesh was getting stuck in his teeth. The only saving grace that made these little bastards worth eating was that they could give 10 evolution points. It's a good deal. Lin Hao could get some good EXP out of this. Up near the water's surface, it looked like the battle of the beasts had concluded in a very bloody manner. The rough shark had been brutally beheaded by the snake beast. Moreover, it looked like the serpentine monster wasn't satisfied with just a single mutated meal. Sensing some movement in the water, it turned its eyes below, where Lin Hao was busy chomping on defenseless small fries. It quickly made a U-turn to face the little koi, evidently hungry for more fresh meat. Lin Hao tried to calm himself down so as not to fumble in a panic. He desperately searched for a way out of the tricky situation. Fortunately, he quickly spotted a weakness that gave him a glimmer of hope. The snake beast had been wounded in its fight against the rough shark. Along its slender body was a deep and long gash that was bleeding profusely. But this wound just made the snake a lot more vicious and aggressive, hungry to snack on the koi's meat. Lin Hao maneuvered around, utilizing his small size to quickly sneak into the monster's blind spot. After making sure that he was out of the enemy's vision, Lin Hao crammed his body inside a small cavern of rocks. Mr. Snake turned its head to where Lin Hao had run, confused as to where that little prey had gone. When you're the size of this monster, you can just brute force your way into finding your next meal. It used its whip-like body to quickly destroy the rock formations on the pond bed. Once that wild rampage was done, the topography looked like an unrecognizable wreckage of rocks and debris. Lin Hao managed to survive through the thrashing unscathed. He reckoned that with those plecos still around, the snake would probably lose interest in a small koi like him as long as he stayed hidden. But he could not shake the chill he was feeling going down his spine. That's because the beast did not give up after a single whipping session. It kept on striking the rocks, pulverizing everything under them. This time, Lin Hao was afflicted by the collapse of the formation in which he was hiding. He didn't know why, but this snake was unusually keen on killing him. If he didn't get smashed to death, he needed to rush out of this place as soon as he could. He might still have a chance of survival if he succeeded in doing so. And so, he steeled his resolve and timed his escape with the strike of the monster's tail. Unfortunately for our boy, the monster wasn't blind. It immediately opened its mouth in his direction. The red menacing tongue of the monster started stretching and binding Lin Hao's body. Being caught while trying to escape nearly zapped his hope of survival. Lin Hao tried using his mighty tail swipe to no avail. There might not be any way to make up for this sheer gap in power. As the fangs followed the tongue, the snake was about to have its little snack. Lin Hao couldn't die just yet. The love of his life was still waiting for him. Speaking of the love of Lin Hao's life, Xiao Shui was preoccupied with dealing with the case of the exploding whale. As the team leader, she led her subordinates out of the way to avoid getting doused and impacted by monster matter. Some debris was about to hit her while retreating, but a certain someone managed to get a hold of team leader Luo. His manly frame easily spun Xiao Xu's body out of harm's way, putting his back in the way to tank the incoming hail of flesh and blood. He had a stoic expression on his gruff face while protecting Xiao Xu. Once the explosion died down, she took a peek at the aftermath. Putrid blood, organs, and the insides of a decomposing monster littered the sandy beach on a rainy day. Now that the high-stakes part was done, Xiao Xue went back to professional mode and politely thanked one of her subordinates. Upon further inspection of the aftermath, she noticed something extremely eye-catching and alarming sprawled on the sand. Among the decomposing matter was a shiny green sludge that stood out among the crimson meat. She immediately determined that the worst-case scenario had happened. Xiao Xu turned to her subordinate and demanded that he and everyone else should get every weapon they could get their hands on. These green blobs were the monster's eggs. They couldn't let even a single one of these things crawl back into the water. Thankfully, the military unit of their team was nearby, and the response was fast and reliable. Armed forces equipped with complete specialized armor and weapons skillfully stormed the beach with impressive speed. Even team leader Luo took up arms, and she looked like she really knew how to work an automatic firearm. On her go signal, she and the rest of her team rained down bullets on the green blobs integrated with the monster's rotten flesh. Her subordinate could not help but praise her for her smarts and deadliness with a weapon. While eliminating the eggs of the beast, Xiaoxue was calm and collected to a terrifying degree. She was absolutely cold-blooded. As if sensing that the love of his life was also struggling at the moment, Lin Hao refused to die in his own dire situation. He couldn't die in the deep waters of a pond full of regrets. The diamond gem attached to his forehead started giving off a mysterious light. He gritted his teeth, and the only thing on his mind was the will to survive. It turned out that the snake beast had swallowed him whole. He was now at the mercy of the monster's digestive system. Seeing the insides of the beast, he was reminded of one simple fact that may spell his death or survival. This snake was wounded in its fight with the shark earlier. As far as Lin Hao remembered, there was a deep gash somewhere on the monster's back. Right now, he was situated in the middle of the thing's stomach. He just needed to find his way toward the monster's back. If he fails to find the only way out on time, he will undoubtedly suffer the same fate as all the partially digested remains scattered around the snake's digestive tract. Lin Hao dismissed all thoughts of defeat, for he had steel-scale armor to protect him when push came to shove. With the use of his razor-sharp teeth, that wound would inevitably be found and desecrated. While venturing deeper and deeper into the monster's insides, he saw a green light full of vitality in the distance. That might be a sign that the beast was healing rapidly. And it was. Outside, the snake beast was munching on some bizarre aquatic herbs to boost his regenerative abilities. When Lin Hao got near the healing light, the flesh was already partially recovered. But this much should not be an issue, for he could just use his ability to harden his scales to an indestructible degree, and then just forcefully ram his entire body right into the recovering wound to forcefully tear it open from the inside. Imagine being the snake beast at this moment. You just had a tiny fish snack, and then you feel something piercing out of your belly with a grating roughness. Lin Hao had enough momentum to create an even bigger wound than the one he used as an exit door. Blood started spurting out of the wound. The snake took all that unimaginable pain and directed it toward the little koi that just messed up his insides. Lin Hao had somehow made his way up near the surface, creating some decent distance between him and the beast. He thanked his lucky stars that the monster was already injured. He would have been done otherwise. Out in the wild once again, Miss Mermaid Goddess finally made her appearance. Looking from above, Lin Hao could not help but ask how deep this alleged pond was. It could fit giant monsters like the mutant water serpent, so there might be some sort of interdimensional portal at the bottom. But that's for Lin Hao to find out for himself. Now that he was out of harm's way, Lin Hao saw that the big pleco fishes had been wiped out, leaving only the little ones. Isn't it natural that he should get a turn to feast on the smaller plecos? As soon as the black fishes noticed the koi coming up to their spot, it seemed like they already knew what was to come. Lin Hao swam up with newfound enthusiasm as he aimed to gladly enjoy nature's gifts. His cheerful mood on the way up was quickly doused while snacking on his prey. All the EXP that he was getting was sweet, but the taste of the fish itself was awful. But he persevered through the inedible tastes and managed to accumulate enough EXP to fulfill the conditions of his next evolution. Of course, he quickly started the process of his next level up. His body glowed with a blinding supernatural light as his entire genetic makeup was altered. Lin Hao, the black koi, reached level 4, growing in size and increasing his combat power to 3.2. In his new status window, everything was pretty much upgraded in terms of quality, but there were also some new lines added. Miss Mermaid appeared to guide him through the new weapons in his arsenal. A new thing he picked up was the passive skill called Tearing Bite. It does what it says and increases his biting strength. It sounded pretty good, but Lin Hao was underwhelmed with this evolution. While he was glad to reach 70 centimeters, he was still nothing compared to the size of that snake that ate him. Along with his upgraded battle prowess were new quests. His normal quests were to devour 100 pleco fishes and 100 apple snails to increase teeth sharpness and scale toughness, respectively. And the special quest was to devour one mutated creature for a random skill. Lin Hao immediately locked in and aimed to feast on more disgusting plecos. At this point, the plecos had wised up and started swimming away from this gluttonous koi. It made hunting them down a little more difficult, but with his speed and tearing bite, it was no problem for Lin Hao. Then something weird happened. One of the fishes that he targeted had an unusually frail body. It was merely an empty shell, without any organs or fish bones inside. There were disgustingly colorful loaches inside the shell instead. Upon closer look, the faces on these loaches were the stuff of nightmares, something that would make anyone's skin crawl. Lin Hao hadn't even made sense of the weirdness that he was witnessing when the loach darted out of the empty shell as if its life depended on it. It managed to spot another fish with no thoughts behind its fish eyes. The colorful loach opened its vile maw and tiny whiskers of tentacles, while it viciously lunged for the eyes of the fish. The poor guy started writhing in pain while the disgusting parasite burrowed its way into the fish's brain. Lin Hao could not believe his eyes. He could have been that poor fish if the loach had decided to target his eyes instead. He was mortified. What in the world was happening in this pond? Lin Hao watched in horror as the parasite ate the brains of the unwitting fish, just swimming mindlessly. He turned to the mermaid goddess to ask if he could eat those parasitic things, and she nonchalantly answered that he could try. Always one to try new things without a fuss. Lin Hao chomped down on the newly possessed fish, and the loach immediately wriggled out to safety. It was surprisingly fast enough to get out of dodge before getting ground down by his razor-sharp teeth. Lin Hao felt infuriated that something so small could run away right out of his hungry mouth. These parasitic loaches were obviously not from this pond, but they surprisingly knew their way around the deep end. With their impressive speed and nearly invisible size, they managed to maneuver around the countless deadly aquatic beasts lurking in the depths. The shallow waters might seem calm at first glance, but every second a living creature spends in this place is chock full of anxiety. Even Lin Hao experienced that. Aside from that anxiety, the mermaid goddess could sense that the little koi was still thinking about that pocket watch that dropped down below. Lin Hao realized that he needed to hurry up and upgrade his kit even more to retrieve that pocket watch. He couldn't afford to waste any more time. And so, the koi darted into the school of plecos to accumulate even more points. Meanwhile, on a shoreline far away from the pond, a fishing boat had been cordoned off and surrounded by police for some mysterious reasons. Inside, one of the fishermen suffered a neck wound so severe that it couldn't be shown on YouTube with how brutal it was. Forensic experts had been deployed to make sense of the incident that struck this innocuous fishing boat. The other fisherman who was there at the scene of the crime looked like he had seen a ghost or something. He kept on insisting that the crew was killed by a loach, but the authorities just looked at him like a crazy person. A simple loach could not possibly inflict such vicious wounds on a human, right? Being treated like he was insane, the fisherman started freaking out and asserting that he wasn't lying, and a loach bit right through his buddy's neck and buried itself into the corpse's body. He was under duress and extremely scared the night that it happened, but calling the police didn't even come to his mind. Furthermore, this guy just implied that the entire crew was killed, but there was only one body inside the boat. If that's the case, where were the other victims? The fisherman heard that, and a chill ran down his spine. He started behaving more erratically and insisted that he saw everyone being killed by that loach. He also warned them right from the start that the loach had bad vibes, but the crew still brought it back. Now that all was said and done, he felt despair. He kept on repeating that it's over. Everything is over now. Luckily, one of the police officers realized that this was above their pay grade and ordered a call to the Dragon Unit. Those guys might provide some answers they desperately needed. This Dragon Unit in question was led by the intricate hands of someone we know. She was currently inspecting fish found in the fishing boat. Xiaoxu was already expecting to see what she was currently seeing. In this boat, there was nothing but empty shells of aquatic life. She grimly asked the surviving fishermen where they caught this cursed batch, and he answered that they ventured near the blocked coastline. Xiaoxu remained calm and asked about the missing bodies of the rest of the crew. The police found the last traces of their blood near a local lake nearby. Team leader Luo started connecting the dots. It seemed that the mutant creature explosion the other day was also invaded by this mutant loach. Its body was full of loach eggs, but that monster was just another victim out of who knows how many others. She immediately hopped on a phone call to inform her team that they had a big problem. The mutant eggs had already entered the inland waters. They needed to organize a rescue in the sub-district. For now, she wanted to be taken to that river where the last traces of the human victims were detected. Back in the shallow waters of the pond, Lin Hao let out an exhausted burp as he continuously shoved fish right down his gullet. Miss Mermaid was lazily watching him from the side, curious as to why he insisted on eating only pleco fish when he had such a wide array of choices in this pond. Lin Hao just wanted to eradicate these invasive species. Besides, he had eaten almost everything that could pose a threat in the shallow water. The rest of the ecology were harmless, native inhabitants that could be left alone peacefully. Moreover, his deliberate mission to eradicate plecofishes gave him enough evolution points to upgrade himself once again. He knew that every time he evolved, there was a possibility of getting a new skill. The last one he got was a skill called Auspiciousness. It might have something to do with Qi. While he was tinkering with his status window, a notification for his quest refresh popped up. His normal mission was still hunting plecofish, but his special mission increased the goal to devour mutated creatures from 1 to 10, with a blue treasure chest as a reward. Since it was early in the morning, his hypothesis that missions refreshed every new day was pretty much confirmed. He looked at the conditions to devour 10 mutant creatures and felt that it sounded a little absurd. Eating them when there weren't that many mutant creatures in this pond in the first place sounded ridiculous. Also, he was positive that those parasitic loaches he spotted were supposed to live in the sea. It was entirely possible that someone or something unleashed those mutated parasites in this dragon pond. Maybe they were mixed in with those plecos. Lin Hao shook his head, getting rid of useless, winding thoughts. It was time to focus on reaping the gains of his hard work. It was time to evolve once again. Upon confirming the evolution process, the supernatural light originating from his diamond gem started swallowing his whole body again. Lin Hao the Black Koi reached level 7. His body was now 1.3 meters long and weighing 6 pounds. Combat power skyrocketed to 7.7 points. His passive auspiciousness could now increase the evolution speed of nearby plants and animals by a small amount. He also gained the ability to camouflage upon staying still in an area. It essentially made him a water chameleon. The moment that the evolution was completed, ordinary fishes of different shapes, sizes, and colors started swimming around him gracefully. This must be due to his divine power being upgraded. The auspiciousness passive skill attracted nearby plants and animals nearby by buffing their evolution speed. On the surface of the pond, a little girl and her mother were watching all kinds of colorful marine life dance around one particular koi. The little girl was delighted to see so many fish put on a spectacular show, but her mother warned her that they needed to get going as this pond was about to go into lockdown. Just as the mother said, the sound of troops marching in unison started advancing steadily. The armed forces formed a barricade around the pond while firmly demanding all civilians leave the area quickly. They promptly deployed some underwater gadgets into the pond to get the lay of the land, or in this case, water. Lin Hao saw these bizarre, high-tech looking gadgets and got close to one out of curiosity. Based on the pulsing signal coming out of the sphere's surface, these gadgets should be detective devices. It turned out that getting close to one of these devices was the worst thing that he could have done as the light it was emitting turned red, and a silent alarm started blaring. Up on the surface, the computer receiving the transmission indicated that the gadgets deployed had detected a mutant creature. Consequently, Lin Hao's own system started acting up and bombarding him with warning messages. It was simply alarming to him of the fact that he had been detected. Now that the presence of mutated creatures deep in the pond has been confirmed, specialized forces equipped with diving gear have been deployed to check things out on site. In their hands were sharp harpoons to use in case of an attack. On one corner of the pond, Lin Hao's system was practically begging him to get the hell out after being marked as a mutant creature. Every angle he looked at was filled with blaring, bright warnings. As he looked above, the silhouette of the divers came into view. Lin Hao already knew that the deep waters were teeming with too many unknown factors, making it dangerous. He didn't expect that the danger could come from dry land, too. Dangerous or not, he couldn't just keep holding still like a sitting duck in the shallows, waiting for the sweet release of death. He'd rather take a chance in the deeper levels instead of dealing with the unknown power level of human forces. The koi made his way deep into the cavernous danger zones of the mysterious dragon pond. He was surprised to find out that the depths were not so bad with his current capabilities. Times had changed, and he was no longer at the bottom of the food chain. Miss Mermaid Goddess reappeared once again. This time she was urging him to venture even further into the depths, to the crevices they had yet to see, an idea that Lin Hao heavily opposed. As the personification of his system, couldn't the Mermaid Goddess just wish for his well-being for once instead of egging him and pushing him, the host, into the fire pit time and time again? The Mermaid Goddess relented and settled for advising Lin Hao to just grab a bite before they hid deeper into the depths. Once he looked at the possible prey that the mermaid was pointing at, Lin Hao felt goosebumps all over his body even though it was physically impossible for a fish. Who wouldn't feel creeped out upon seeing a fish with multiple parasitic loaches clinging to its head? Lin Hao decided to use one of his newly acquired skills. Camouflage. This ability was quite handy. It was the perfect tool for sneak attacks. Since he was up for the challenge, the poor prey he was testing it on was the loach-infested fish. Lin Hao did not let the disgust of seeing those parasites wriggling prevent him from taking a big bite and eating the whole head of the infected fish. He described the sensation of eating those mutated loaches as slippery. It was very similar to the feeling of eating glass noodles. Surprisingly, that single bite fulfilled the conditions to complete his special task of devouring 10 mutant creatures in one go. He could not believe that it was that easy to get a blue treasure chest. The contents of the chest remain a mystery until the Mermaid Goddess opens it. This reward contains a skill called Black Iron Scales. It was pretty much self-explanatory. The scales all over his body would be as hard as black iron. The transformation was fast and impressive. Finally, Lin Hao, the black koi, gained a color that matched his name. The transformation made him feel like all his scales had been plucked out, but it didn't hurt much. He just felt itchy all over. This reward he stumbled upon is quite a game changer. Still, it's just a skill that he needs to activate. His first transformation was quite exhausting as he was still not used to it. But with this new scale armor, self-preservation shouldn't be a big problem anymore. Speaking of self-preservation, it looks like his confidence will be tested once more. A bigger predator has been lurking around in the dark, watching his every move. Lin Hao immediately sensed the bloodlust coming from behind and hurriedly turned his attention to the source. It was the beast that he had some unfinished business with, the gigantic mutant snake beast of the depths. He did not expect that they'd meet each other again so soon. But it's here. The second round of their battle is about to commence. The mutant snake opened the battle with his terrifying lunge, launching at breakneck speeds. His jaw was open, expecting to swallow the little koi whole once again. As Lin Hao speedily retreated, his system warned him that the current opponent's combat power was slightly higher than the host's. Suddenly, he stopped retreating and turned his whole body to face the enemy. With a confident smile, the system presented him with a glimmer of hope. If the snake just has a slight advantage in combat power, then maybe it's time to show who's the real boss. This snake beast would certainly have him beat when it comes to intimidation tactics, but Lin Hao stood with unwavering conviction in the face of the mortifying roars. Using his newfound power, Lin Hao activated black iron scales, equipping his whole body with near-indestructible armor. The snake beast foolishly charged forward to take a solid bite that could have ripped Lin Hao's body in half, but the monster was surprised at the sensation of pain spreading across his mouth instead. He chomped down even harder, but the black scales were just too tough to puncture. It came to a point where the snake's fangs were being shattered. The snake finally gave up after getting his own fangs ground down as the bleeding from severe gum wounds spread in the water. This interaction convinced Lin Hao that he had the upper hand now. With supercharged energy, he primed his revenge attack, a powerful tail slam. The powerful clap back caught the snake by surprise. While it was still writhing in pain from its broken teeth, a solid blow landed on its face. The tail slam was forceful enough to launch the massive beast barreling down deeper. Still, this beast was truly a formidable one. It managed to catch itself from free-falling too deep. Lin Hao was just trying to drive home the fact that a beast is a beast. They attack based on instinct, and they don't learn their lessons. Just like this stupid snake going for another one of its predictable lunge attacks. This time, Lin Hao decided to turn the tables around and take a bite out of the one that had gotten used to biting others. His enhanced razor-sharp teeth were no joke. They dug deep enough through the monster's tough scales and flesh to make the snake bleed again. Sensing that the enemy was about to launch another attack to get him to let go, the koi promptly called upon the power of the black iron scales, coating his body with armor. At this point, he was just enjoying making the beast that tried to digest him struggle. With this fight, he could finally display the fruits of his painstaking evolution. Realizing that the little koi was a bit too much to handle, the mutant snake started making a run for it. They started off with Lin Hao as the prey. It looks like they will be ending things with the little koi as the predator. He persisted with chasing and biting the mutant snake as much and as hard as he could. The deeper his razor-sharp teeth dug in, the more pain the retreating beast had to endure. With one final push, Lin Hao screamed his intention to kill this rival of his. As the mutant snake started to bleed from every orifice imaginable, that intention might be coming to fruition sooner rather than later. Lin Hao's biting force and tenacity resulted in him tearing off a huge chunk of the mutant snake's raw flesh, opening an even deeper wound than the last time. The beast must have realized that retreating and defending were useless. So, he extended his tongue to restrict the koi's movement once again. But this time, Lin Hao had upgraded scale strengthening and a powerful tail swing to use as a forceful escape plan. The tail swing was evidently different from the one before. This one enveloped Lin Hao's body with electrifying energy as a water vortex launched towards the monster. This vortex started wreaking havoc and wounding the snake mutant in multiple vital areas. The sequence of attacks ultimately culminated in a final dash that pierced through the snake's body, reminiscent of how Lin Hao survived their first encounter. Today, he wasn't just breaking the flesh open for the sake of escape. This one was for the sake of killing. Seeing the mutant snake plunge to its death from multiple deep cuts and wounds, Lin Hao's black iron scale armor started dissipating just in time. The system congratulated him for slaying the mutant red dot brocade snake. After the fight, the ground below displayed the intensity of the struggle. Craters upon craters stained in blood had been formed. Lin Hao carefully chewed on the flesh that he tore away from multiple parts of the mutant snake's body. He felt that the ending between their blood-soaked feud was quite anticlimactic. Since he finally got the bad taste of defeat and powerlessness out of his mouth, it was about time to get back what's rightfully his. After some off-screen feasting upon the corpse of the mutant red dot brocade snake, Lin Hao was now 500 evolution points richer than earlier. That's the highest number of points he has been rewarded for a single kill. The mermaid goddess explained that this is what happens when you challenge beyond your level and succeed. Besides the points, there are unexpected gains too. Lin Hao heard her say that and immediately turned with curiosity in his eyes. The mention of unexpected gains piqued his curiosity. The mermaid goddess did not waste any more words. It was better to let Lin Hao experience the process himself by calling on the power of the diamond gem lodged in his forehead. Miss Mermaid Goddess's system power coalesced right into Lin Hao's core in a beautiful light show. Suddenly, he was gone from the world of endless waters. The feeling was similar to the sensation of evolution. Lin Hao opened his eyes, and to his surprise, his vision returned to its original human state. In place of his fins were hands that he thought were gone forever. The koi fish had vanished, and the only one left in the middle of this magical water world was the incredibly ripped human body of Lin Hao. He tried moving his human hands around, closing them into fists, and there seemed to be no problem with his mobility at all. Just seeing his normal limbs again brought him so much joy. He really missed his hands. In his situation, who wouldn't? But more importantly, he got his handsome and charming face back in place of his scaly and fishy mug. He was so hyped that Lin Hao started shaking the mermaid goddess enthusiastically. She had to calm him down by making it clear that this transformation would just be temporary for a short amount of time. Suddenly, Lin Hao's optimism was dashed. To be given something you so dearly desire but to only get it for a limited time is a little bittersweet. The mermaid goddess wanted to make sure that he knew the parameters surrounding this human form completely. As she said, this is just a temporary fix. At his core, he's still nothing but a low-level fish. Furthermore, Lin Hao can only talk to her as others won't be able to hear his voice. He will have no combat abilities as of now, which is a bummer, but even so, he gets to look human again. And that's all that matters. Lin Hao wanted to take advantage of this limited window to leave the water and go to the shore at once. The mermaid goddess wasn't opposed to the idea. But if he leaves the water as he is right now, he'll probably be taken by the authorities for being a naked weirdo when someone spots him. Thankfully, that should not be an impossible problem to solve. Lin Hao steadily swam to the surface of the mystical dragon pond, careful not to attract attention right from the get-go. He remembered that there was a storage room near the shores that people rarely visited. Lin Hao sneakily broke through the surface, using a lily pad as his cover. He knew for sure that the storage housed unclaimed lost items inside. This was huge. The room could basically act as his temporary dressing room. Taking some algae to use as temporary pants, he did his best to remain undetected by any prying human eyes while heading for the storage room door. Once he finally made sure that no one was watching the area, he dashed to the door. Luckily for him, the people in charge of this place don't use locks. After rummaging through the piles of lost and found boxes, he found a decent tracksuit that seemed clean enough. The only thing he took along with him to the surface was the recovered locket. He took the valuable trinket from the table after solving the problem of his nakedness and headed out of the storage room. Lin Hao found a cap lying around and swiped that too, just to remain inconspicuous since the sun was still out. Heading out, he was just starting to realize that since it's been a while since he's been on land, he's still trying to get used to walking with two legs again, instead of swimming with a tail and fins. In case you forgot, the perimeter of the dragon pond has been cordoned off, and armed forces have been deployed to monitor the area under suspicion of mutant activities. Lin Hao approached the restricted place and was immediately yelled at by the authorities. They thought that he was just a wandering tourist, unaware that the vicinity had been restricted. In his human form, he can't really talk with other humans using a human tongue. That's just one of the restrictions of his transformation imposed by the system and the mermaid goddess. One of Xiaoxui's loyal subordinates has been left to organize the base of operations around the pond. He had to field phone calls for his boss, the head of the research team, Luo Shui. Lin Hao might not be able to speak, but he was confident that he'd just heard the name of the love of his life being uttered by that guy. So, against the armed forces' orders, Lin Hao walked closer to the restricted area. The officers had to hold him down in a panic. The team leader's subordinate, this gruff captain, asked the unknown visitor for his identity and how he managed to get into this place. Lin Hao had to communicate with just gestures because of his missing voice. He had to animatedly point to the locket in his hands to let them know what was happening. He simply offered it to the captain to clear things up. The captain carefully took the trinket out of his hands. When he opened the locket, he saw the smudged photo of Lin Hao and team leader Luo. This thing must have belonged to his boss. The captain asked if this voiceless young man knew the leader, and he promptly nodded his head. The captain smiled and thanked the young man on behalf of team leader Luo, then politely told Lin Hao to hurry home as there was still a secret mission ongoing in this pond. When a familiar voice full of conviction asking for the status of their clearing operation echoed out, the two men near the caution line had starkly different reactions. The captain immediately checked on the status of team leader Luo's business with the west side of the city, while Lin Hao tried his best to obscure his face with the cap. He knew that he couldn't meet Xiaoxue yet. He can't speak, and the dragon team is investigating mutant creatures. But the biggest problem of all is the unknown limited duration of his human form. Fortunately, the captain was a man of his word. He handed the locket to his boss and told her that it was found by a young man who fervently asked for the trinket to be handed back to its owner. Upon seeing this object that she thought was forever lost, Xiaoxue was more than just shocked. Then she started demanding the identity of the young man who retrieved the locket. The captain, clueless as to what's happening, just pointed at the guy behind him. But Lin Hao had long since run away from the area in fear of making the situation more complicated. The captain reckoned that the young man must have just been a tourist loitering around the area. Just getting the pocket watch should already be good news. She agreed and urged her subordinate to get back to work. But deep inside, team leader Luo had an inkling of suspicion that Lin Hao must have retrieved this watch. She's still holding on to the possibility that the love of her life is still alive, and her instincts were spot on. Lin Hao ran away from the restricted area and hid behind some thick bushes from afar. He inwardly apologized to his girl, for they couldn't meet just yet. When the time was right, he promised to explain everything clearly. It looked like his decision to get out of that place was the right one, as the system was now spamming him with warning prompts about how his human form time was about to end soon. Lin Hao quickly dashed back into the water before the timer ran down to 0. Everything that has happened so far is beyond understanding. Whether as a human or a fish, he can't live aimlessly anymore. It's time to lock in. His brief time back on the surface presents that it's possible for him to evolve into a proper human form. His core evolution isn't fixed, and the possibility of transformation is virtually endless. Recalling the event that plunged him into his current bizarre situation, Lin Hao steeled his resolve to train and evolve properly. He needs to find out what exactly happened on that cursed day. Far away from the pond, a lone skyscraper stood in the middle of the city. It's the renowned Longyin Research Center. In one of the most secure rooms of the facility, someone was making a life-altering decision. Luofei was handing in her application form to apply as a full-time field agent, much to her superior's disagreement. She assured the man wearing a lab coat she called Old Zhang that she had thought this decision through for a long time. But her application included the request to inject high-concentration GT virus into her system, a procedure that carries massive risks. Since Luofei has been widely regarded as an expert researcher, there's really no need for her to take this kind of risk. But she sees things differently. She wanted Old Zhang to understand that her transfer to the action team full-time as a field agent would be more conducive to her research. The old man had worked with this headstrong lady for a long time and knew what she was actually thinking. He knew that she wanted to go out there in the anomaly sites for the sake of her missing lover, Lin Hao. But the whole world is facing a major crisis right now. This is hardly the time for personal feelings to get involved. They need to keep their priorities straight and understand the situation. She assured Old Zhang that her decision was not just for Lin Hao. One of their long-running problems is that the research team can never get to anomalous scenes in time, causing a lot of relevant information about mutant creatures to be lost and missed. If she could join the action team in a full-time role, it might lead to new breakthroughs in their research about these bizarre phenomena. Old Zhang sighed in defeat. She made a very strong case for approval of her application. So, the old man took the form with a heavy heart and approved her request for transfer. Back in the Dragon Pond, Lin Hao is currently experiencing a similar transition in life. Since there's nothing new to devour in the shallow waters, it's about time for him to venture into the dark depths. The mermaid goddess asked him if he was sure about this significant decision. There are many unknown creatures in the deep waters. The danger levels are in a different league. Lin Hao answered by diving deep into the mouth of the dark cavern leading to the depths. The mermaid goddess was right about the dangers that this place entails, but he'll still give